Okay, here we go. Podcast 42 action. And hello, people. Welcome to the STONED Roadie show. And it's a Saturday night special. It's a podcast where Skynyrd stories are told. And on tonight's show, we have Mike Caruso, who was a good friend of Alan Collins, and he was actually a pallbearer at Alan's funeral. And I'm just going to hand this over to Kathy GODSEY, and let's roll with this one, Kathy GODSEY.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you again for inviting me on the show for this Saturday night special. And I'm so happy to welcome Mike Caruso to the show. I've known Mike for a couple of years on Facebook, and I know that he was a good friend of Alan's for a long time. And Mike and I have had many conversations in which he shared fun experiences that he's had with Alan and with Alan's daughter Allison, and how they shared their birthdays together. So it was my idea to invite Mike on the show, and he's so honored to be here to talk about his friendship with Alan and how he met the band, how he met Alan, and a little bit just to give us more information about Alan and what kind of a great guy he was. So here's Mike Caruso. So Mike, welcome to the Stone Roadie Show.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored and glad to be here.
Uh,
But I'm even happier because I got to see what goes on before the show goes on the air. And that's a show in itself, I tell you.
we don't rehearse, we don't script, we don't edit. If it messes up, whatever.
That in itself was fun. Um,
Yeah. So glad to meet you finally. And I see that you're a very accomplished guitarist because you give us a little sample of what you can do. And I've seen so many of your videos on Facebook where you've just played guitar. So hopefully you'll be able to play something for us. But I want to know more about how you got to know the band. And I have pictures of you with Alan on your celebrating your birthdays together. So let's go back to the very beginning and tell us when you first met the band, where, how, and that how did that develop into the friendship with, I believe, Dean and Alan,
yeah,
right?
I graduated from high school a year early and I was 17 years old. And I've been playing guitar and harmonica since I was 10. So, what I really wanted to do was play the blues, and I was really serious about it. So I had an uncle tell me if you want to be, a good blues player, you got to go to where the blues are. And you got to go find people that are masters at their craft so you can learn from them. So, I just from what I knew about it, I went to Memphis and I left home. I didn't have any money. I had an old Yamaha guitar. I hadn't started playing slide yet, so I was just playing, regular guitar. And I had a bunch of harmonicas. So I had some friends that I had met in California surfing, who had a friend in Memphis named Memphis Mike, who was a bartender, and they told me he could hook me up with all the old blues players that were left in Memphis. This is like 1974. So, I went with them and I met Memphis Mike, and he hooked me up and got me a gig playing harmonica for Furry Lewis. And Furry was one of the very first Delta blues players that got recorded. He made the record in 1927. And little did I know that Furry was a mentor and a hero to Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones, when they came to Memphis, used to have Furry open up for them. And they gave him a real nice Gibson acoustic guitar, and it had a plaque on it that I saw later. It says, "From England with love, the Rolling Stones." They gave Furry that guitar. And, I didn't have no idea. I had no idea. So, he loved harmonica, but he didn't play it, And how this thing happened with him is Memphis Mike got me a bottle of whiskey. I don't drink, and I never did drink. And so got me a bottle of whiskey. And he says, "I'm going to take you over to Furry's house now. When you get up there, hide that bottle behind your back and tell him why you're there." So I went up there and I knocked on the door, and he came there, and he's saying, like, "What are you doing here, white boy? You were definitely in the wrong part of town." I said, Mr. Lewis, I came to see if you couldn't teach me some slide guitar. I want to learn slide guitar. And he says, you best just get yourself out of here now. And then I whipped out that bottle of whiskey. And he rocked back and he said, "Oh my God, boy, why don't you tell me you had that?" Brought me in there, and I played harmonica for him. He loved harmonica, but he didn't play it himself. Says, "I want you to come down to a bar, I believe it was called No Peanuts Today in Memphis, and play, be his backup." So I started doing that, and I did about 3 or 4 nights, and like the fourth night into it, these guys came into the bar, and I didn't know who they were, and I was smoking marijuana outside on the sidewalk with them and talking to them, and they were real nice. And I asked, "Well, what do you guys? Who are you? Or something to that effect? Who are you guys? What do you do?" And I believe it was Ronnie Van Zandt. He said to me, "We got a band called Lynyrd Skynyrd, and we're just coming out with our second album. And there's a song there you might like called Sweet Home Alabama." And I said, "Oh yeah." And I looked at him. I said, "Lynyrd, what?" Lynyrd, what? He looked at me. So anyway, they took me back to where they were staying that night, and I got to meet Alan. During that conversation I was having with them. We were smoking some urban stuff. Yeah, he asked me, "Hey, when's your birthday? Where are you from, and when's your birthday?" To that effect. And I told him I'm from California. That probably wasn't doing me any good. But then I told him my birthday's July 19th, and he goes, "No way, man. No way. That's my birthday." I said, "Yes way. Yes." And I got out my California driver's license, and I showed him. "Read it and weep." And I had a wonderful night. And I met Dean, and they were just like, they didn't care that I was homeless. They didn't care that I was on the edge of crazy, because I was starting my first manic episode. I'm bipolar at that time. They just treated me like like regular folk. They treated me really good. And they didn't have no airs about them about being, in the music business or on, I'm sure they knew where they were headed because how good Sweet Home Alabama was doing. But they were awesome, and there's a lot of cool people hanging out, So I don't know. I hung out there until it was evident that they were getting ready to crash. And then I went back to the park. Oh, that was part of it. Back at the bar where I was playing with Furry Lewis, they asked me where I was living at. "Where are you staying?" I said, my home's the third tree at the end of the park down there."
Oh.
Yeah, basically I'm homeless. My home's down there at the end of the park under the third tree. If you need to find me, and I don't know. And there was that song that Ronnie wrote later. I heard it about the cold wind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a lot of compassion for people that were homeless or people having a tough time with it. And I remember when I heard that song for the first time, it made me understand how come they were so good to me.
So thank you for that. So after that meeting with them, when did you reconnect with them again?
Okay, that was that my father had to fly to Tennessee to get me, and I wound up in the hospital for about 3 months in California, where they misdiagnosed me, and I just went through hell. And then I went down to stay with my mom, and I saw, that they were doing a show at the San Diego Civic, and this guy named with Charlie Daniels, and I got a ticket to go, not one of the best tickets, but I got a ticket to go. So I'm sitting back up there and I'm watching the band. There's this guy down there working the road crew. It's Andy Tanis. I knew Andy Tanis from Memphis. I hung out with him at the music store he worked at. And, I remember him telling me he was going to get a job, being a roadie or working for a sound company. I remember that. And, so I walked down the stage and I said, "Hey, Andy." He turned around and he remembered me. He said, "Oh, he's happy to see me. Happy to see me. How are you doing?" "I'm doing good, and I'm living here now." And, how's things going for you? He says, I'm really happy I'm doing this. And about that time, I don't know, he hooked me up with Dean. He introduced me to Dean. He says, Dean, you know, um, I think they didn't have a layover that night. They had to travel right after the show, I think, because they didn't ask me to come back to the hotel that night. But I got to meet Dean. Well, now the next time I saw him, they were playing at the Balboa Stadium in San Diego. They were a big band. Fleetwood Mac was opening up for Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's when Fleetwood Mac was just starting to kick it, you know. But they were opening up for Lynyrd Skynyrd, and it was Fleetwood Mac, Lynyrd Skynyrd, I think Seals and Croft, and the headliner that night was Rod Stewart and Tower of Power. But they were staying down on Mission Island at the Sheridan Hotel, and Dean told me come on down to the hotel and hang out with us. So I did. And I called my little brother because my family was skeptical about I'd ever met or knew any of them. I called my little brother and told him to come down, and he did. And he brought 6 vials of Hashish. He called it 30 weight. You know, real strong. You know, essence of marijuana. And it's in an oil. It's like Hashish. So my brother came down there and made everybody, and I'll never forget. We got to smoking some in the room, and Gary was smoking on it, and Gary slid right down the wall. Boom!
Craig, I'm sorry. Let me just ask a question real quick. Craig, were you there at this time? Would you recall any of this stuff going on?
I don't really recall it. No,
Okay.
I was there, but we partied all the time. I mean, it's just just another party to me.
Okay.
Yeah, do you remember that show where the band opened up for Fleetwood Mac?
Not particularly, no. I remember the Santa Monica Civic, but I don't really remember much about it though.
Right. Santa Monica Civic was the best venue to play in California. Everybody's pretty much thinks that it has the best acoustics, I think, of any venue in California. I saw Weather Report play there with Jaco Pastorius, and I saw Al Di Meola play there. And that is one of my favorite places to see a show. That and Red Rocks in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. I was there in August. I was in Colorado and we went there. It was beautiful. I didn't see a concert there, but it was just gorgeous. I would have liked to have seen a concert.
Well, Mike was talking about Andy Tanis. We had Andy on the show. Oh gosh, I don't know, a long time ago. It was 4 or 5 or 6 or somewhere in there, Stone Roadie show. But yeah, he was with the sound guy with Rock and Roll Audio with Joe Osborne.
Yeah, I remember hearing. I vaguely remember meeting Joe Osborne in Tennessee too. But for sure, Andy remembers me. After I watched that show, that podcast that you had with Andy, I freaked out because I go, "There's the Tanner Leaves," because they called them Tanner Leaves. So I messaged him and I told him, and after talking to him a little bit, I came back and said, "Oh my God, I remember you." And that makes, and we've been friends now for a while. Shooting things back and forth because I had a lot of friends who worked for Black Oak, Arkansas.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Now, Andy was like you said, he was a musician. When you guys met, was it on a musical kind of format? Was it something to do with music? Because he's a guitar player and a singer.
Yeah, I met him at the music store he worked at in Memphis. So he was working in the music store when I met him. I didn't know that he played because he played a little bit of guitar while I was in there. But he's a super guy, just a super guy. And
did you keep in touch with Andy after he left Skinner and then he went with Black Oak?
No, I didn't know any of that until just recently. I'm with your podcast when he was talking about what he was doing in his life. No, I lost contact. I lost contact with Andy in the midst of my illness. And after that time, I saw him in San Diego working as a roadie for Skynyrd. I lost contact. My life was it was a series of ups and downs, you know, due to my mental health disorder. But I reconnected with Andy here on Facebook due to your show, and it's been wonderful because I have a lot of friends in Arkansas, and I have one of my best friends who's a guitar player has been playing in Black Oak, Arkansas for like the last 8 years. So, you know, and I know Jim is it Jim Magnum? Jim Magnum, I think his name. I know his
Jim
son.
Dandy, yeah, Jim Dandy, yeah.
Yeah, I know his son pretty good. And um, I played in various bands for 45 years and never missed a gig. And I played for a lady blues singer named Wanda Watson in Tulsa, Oklahoma for years. I made her first album with her, and she's awesome. She was inducted into the Oklahoma Blues Hall of Fame here not too long ago. And some of the drummers that worked with us was John Hoff, who played for Freddie King and for Stevie Ray Vaughan when Stevie was young. And then David Teagarden, who was Bob Seger's drummer. He got a Grammy for Against the Wind. And for Jamie Oldecker, Eric Clapton's old drummer. They all from Tulsa. So I got blessed and got to work with some pretty amazing musicians later in my life.
That's wonderful. So
And
hi, Craig. I'm sorry.
no, I just wanted to have Mike touch on the guitar that Alan gave you, the 57 Stratocaster. I just wanted to maybe touch on that a little bit and see how that all came about.
All right. It was our birthday. This one right here in this picture. During that day, he asked me to get all his guitars out from that closet. He had them all lined up in the closet. He wanted me to take a look at them and see what they needed. Because, you know, after playing guitar for so many years, I'm kind of guitar savvy. So I got them out, all of them out on the floor in the living room and started popping the cases. You know, and he was shaking his head because recently before this, somebody had stole some guitars out of his house. So, you know, I was flipping through these cases and he wasn't.
What year was this, Mike? What year was
1988.
88.
All right. So I'm flipping through those cases, you know, and there's an old black Fender Stratocaster case, you know, one from like the early 70s. And I flip that open and I pull out that Stratocaster and he says, "Oh my God, that's the one I'm looking for." He goes, do you know what kind of guitar that is? Yeah, man, it's an old Vinny Strat. Looks like 50s, you know? He says, "I bet you it sounds awesome." And he says, No, you're wrong. He says, "That's your birthday present."
Oh, wow. Isn't that
Wow.
I freaked out, boy. I freaked out big time. And then he told me he got that guitar during the Roston Column days because Leon Wilkerson gave it to him. So he got the guitar from Leon. And then later on, you know, I think there was some business dealings behind that. You know, I don't really, you know.
I think you kind of mentioned that Leon had bought a big amount of cocaine and Alan kind of funded that experience, and then Leon
Gave him the guitar as collateral.
Yeah,
And then as
failed
years
to
went
pay
by,
Alan back for the
right?
cocaine.
Yes. Years went on, and Leon kept bugging him to get the guitar back, but he hadn't paid him the money. So you could tell Alan. I'm great. Alan was hurt. He was kind of hurt about it and angry. You know, and so you know. But when he gave it to me, I didn't know that. I just knew that Leon had given it to him. I didn't know the particulars. I didn't know the history behind it until later on. You know, until later on. You know, I don't know. I think, you know, close to the 90s, you know, or not the 90s, but late 89 or 89, before he passed away. He told me one time, I don't want you telling anybody that where you got that guitar from. Because Leon's been calling me still looking for it. You know?
So he had
he had to tell me why.
So he had that guitar from since like 1980. Well, Washington
81,
Collins started
82.
in 80. So
Right. It
yeah,
was in
80.
80 or 81 he had it for that long. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a killer diller Stratocaster. It had that only an old Strat can sound like that. And the only guitar that I played in my life more than I love that one is the black Stratocaster Alan had.
Yeah,
That was
Blackie with the
yeah,
telly
Blackie.
neck. With the
Yeah, it
telly
had a
neck, yeah.
51 Telecaster neck. It had 55 pickups in it on a 63 body. And that neck on that guitar, I have never in my life played a guitar like that. It was like melting butter. It was the smoothest, nicest guitar I've ever played. You know. Now at this what do you call it, intersection of the show? Did I say that right?
Sure.
I would like to,
That's close enough, yeah.
I would like to play a little slide guitar in honor of the Stone Roadie.
We would love that. And that shirt you have that you're wearing, I want one. Please hook me up with whomever can get one for me. The only
Okay.
Rossington Collins shirts I have are from 1980, and they're shreds.
Oh, I bet. Let me get the camera just a little bit. This guitar, I call it Old Blue. Sorry, you guys.
That's okay.
Well, then, yeah, you can see it now.
That's a
There you got it.
beautiful guitar.
Yeah. I call this tune On the Road with the Stone Roadie. Okay, here we go.
Beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. Beautiful
Little
guitar you
slide
have.
slide
Very nice.
guitar on a dobro. Hey Mike, why don't you tell us about how you became I know you said Larkin called you and asked you to be a pallbearer and Alan's funeral. Can you tell us a little bit about the ceremony that day, the
Yeah,
Alan's ceremony?
yeah. First of all, he called me and he asked me if I wanted to come and be a pallbearer for Alan. And I was honored, but I thought that somebody more worthy, like Gary Roadies Jr., like that, should be his pallbearer. He said, "No, Mike, it's only family." So I flew back there and and literally went to where they were having the ceremony for the funeral. Um, shortly, I spent the night when I got there, and the next day I was at the funeral house. And they sat all of us pallbearers right up front in the front row. So we would be ready to do what we had to do at the end of the ceremony. So, I remember about three things from that part of the day real well. First, I remember I was just hurt bad, really, really hurting bad. And the second thing is they played the version of Freebird off the live album. One More from the Road. Oh, yeah, One More from the Road. That version of Freebird they played during the ceremony because that was Alan's favorite version of it. And then the next thing I remember, and you probably know about this, you may know about it or not, but Alan liked to sing Amazing Grace. At a certain point in his enumeration, he's singing Amazing Grace. So, bless your heart, you do know, don't you? So we went.
I break out into that song every now and then myself. I
can attest to
once
that.
was lost,
Oh,
but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
So we're carrying the casket out to the hearse, right? And we're loading it up, and there's the minister, right? The guy who gave him, is doing the ceremony, right? And I walked over to him after he loaded up the hearse, and I said, "Excuse me, Pastor. So I just want you to know that Alan's favorite hymn was Amazing Grace." And he goes, "Well, thank you." And then we all, the hearse took off. We all took off. We wound up at the cemetery, right? And we're out there, and I there must have been 2,000 or 3,000 people there, Craig. And we got him situated. The casket held over the hole, ready to be lowered. And then the pastor gave another beautiful eulogy for Alan. It was awesome. And at the end of it, he goes, "I understand that Alan's favorite hymn was Amazing Grace. So I would like all of us to sing it for him." And boom, 3,000 people sing Amazing Grace for him. And I could tell you, I was just crying, crying. I kind of had to walk away from where I was, and I went over and I stood next to Johnny and Gary were there, and they were standing together. I went over there and stand with them for a little bit, and I didn't want to be there any longer, and I haven't been back since. And I miss him. I miss him real bad, especially him calling me 3 a.m, drunk as a skunk, telling me dirty jokes. And his name for me was Chicken Picking. That's what he called me, Chicken Picking, because I can pick, I can chicken pick pretty damn good on a guitar when I want to. I can make it squawk like a chicken, especially electric guitar. But I miss him. There was a lot of times when I used to spend time with him, during our birthday or wherever we were, that it wasn't like, he was a guy who wrote Freebird, or his founding father, Lynyrd Skynyrd. It wasn't like that. He was my bro. He was my friend. I don't know how to explain that. It's like I forgot that part of his life and just liked him for himself because he was so funny. Looky. He was funny.
Yeah. Mike, are there any jokes that Alan told you that you could repeat on this show that are
Sure.
not
No,
really
there's sure.
inappropriate?
My favorite one Because he woke me up at 3 a.m, called me, and he's laughing, and he goes, chicken picking, chicken picking. Do I have a joke for you? And I said, Alan, you know what time it is? We're at least 2 or 3 hours earlier than you out here in Oregon. He said, no. Looky, you gotta listen to this one. Listen to this one.
Looky here.
Yeah, looky here. And so and then he launched into this joke, and I'll never forget it. He goes, there's this black lady named Elvira who got her period, and she had to go to the store to get herself some Kotex. So she goes down to the store, and it's late at night or early in the morning, I'm not sure which. And she walks in there, and there's a stock boy down there stocking all the stuff. And she looks down here, she goes, excuse me, sir. I was on my period, and I need me some Kotex. And he turns around, and he looks up, and he goes, what kind of flow you got, ma'am? And she goes, well, my flow is linoleum.
Oh my gosh.
What's your flow like? Linoleum.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. What kind of flow you got, ma'am? Well, my flow is linoleum.
Yeah, Mike, excuse me. Can you tell us the story about, well, first of all, the time that Alan said he bought you the Porsche?
Oh, you got to hear. This is great.
Yeah.
So it's about a week before my birthday. His birthday too. And he's all excited, calls me. He says, chicken beaking. I go, what up, bro? He says, you never believe what I got you this year for your birthday. And I said, and in suspense, I said, I was hanging, He said, I got you a Porsche. I said, no way, Alan. I said, you take that son of a bitch back and get your money. I don't need a Porsche. You got medical stuff going on. You probably need the money. Just take that Porsche back. And then this is what he said. Watch, chicken beating. It's a Porsche that we both can drive. And I started thinking about this. Oh, a car that me and him can drive? Why, he's been banned from owning a car and a driver's license forever in the state of Florida. So if it's a car he can drive, it must be a remote control car. That's what I'm thinking. So I fly back out there, and I get there on our birthday, and he gets Allison to bring me my gift, and it's all wrapped up real nice, and it's in a box, and I get out. Sure enough, it is one of the nicest remote control cars you ever seen, and it's a Porsche. So we're both partaking, smoking doobies and stuff, and we go out, out his screen door or sliding glass door out the back, and then over onto the driveway, and out front to the big section of it. And I'm reading the instructions, right, and I'm learning how to drive it, right, and I'm getting it down to go forward, turn it, come backwards, and because I'm not a guy who really has a lot of toys with joysticks. So, I'm getting it down, and he's pulling my hair. I mean, that hair right there, he's pulling it there. And he says, let me drive it. Let me drive it. I want to drive it now. Let me drive it. Let me know. Let me learn how to use it, bro. And so finally, I was happy enough with what extent I got to learn how to use it. And I handed him the remote. I think I told him, well, it's my birthday present. So I gave him the remote, and and I don't know how he did this, but he took off going 90 miles an hour as fast as he could. And it went down the end of the driveway, and it hit the curb, and it shattered in pieces. I looked dead eye to I looked at this. You shouldn't even be allowed to drive a remote car. You should be banned from that too. If it's a car, you're gonna wreck it, right? He laughed. Oh God, we laughed. It was so funny. You should. I wish the whole world could have seen that. Just pieces going. I honestly think, I miss my Ro. I miss my friend real bad. I miss him all the time. I miss him because I had hope for him that he could have gotten recovery and got well, because he would have made a hell of a producer. He could have mixed records for everybody. He there was still a lot he could have done in the music business. But on the other hand, I also thought when his dad called me to tell me he passed away, I also thought that that wasn't the worst thing that could happen, because then he was at peace and he wasn't in pain anymore, because he was tormented by a lot of things that had happened in his life. Just with Craig too. Imagine being in that kind of a successful music business or band and then being in a plane crash. It's like it's all taken away from me because the damn guys dumped the gas out of the plane. They went to switch tanks or something and wound up, jettisoning all the gasoline on the plane. I don't, that's you can't do anything to change that, but that sure messed up a lot of people. At this point in Craig's life, I'm sure that he's at a point where he's dealt with it. In fact, when he talks about that plane crash and says he was knocked out and was unconscious, so he imagines it wasn't as much of a nightmare as it was for him and everybody else. And a few weeks later, he was working as a roadie. What was it, for Foreigner?
Foreigner, yeah. The crash was the last of October, and by the 1st of February, I'm living in New York City doing the Double Vision album with Foreigner. Yeah.
Wow.
And you mentioned something about meeting Ian McDonald somewhere.
Yeah, he was. Listen, I did a search on him because I remember that night real vividly, because Carmen Apapis was there too. And that dude Pete that was a freaking crazy night. And that guy was there, Ian McDonald, and he told me that he was in King Crimson. Well, he was in King Crimson. He was, if you do a Google search on it, he was a founding father of King Crimson. And when he left King Crimson, he went on to found Foreigner. Same guy.
Yeah, he was he played sax on with King Crimson, and then he played sax with Foreigner too.
Right. That song,
I was his guitar roadie, and I also took care of his saxophone too.
He's an awesome dude. He was the most funnest person to be with in that hotel room that night, because he had that English accent, and he was getting good and baked and hammered and making fun of everybody. He was just on a roll. And then they started doing this thing where they opened up there was a balcony, and up on the 7th floor at the Howard Johnson and Universal City. He opened up that sliding glass door, and there's some new trees they planted out there in the courtyard, right? So they had this bet going on who could hit the tree, where it's planted, the circle that the tree's in. Who could hit that circle with beer bottle? They started having the thing going, right? And Artemis, no joke now, Artemis said, I got you all beat. And he went over the balcony and clutched the railings with his feet. So he's upside down, hanging 7 stories up, high as a kite. And he's throwing beer bottles to see if he can make it. And it was like, all I want to do is close my eyes. And I know I read articles, towards that period of time where Ronnie was wanting to get the guys, to calm down and not so much alcohol. Do you remember that, Craig?
Oh yeah. It didn't ever work out very well, but it was talked about.
Okay, because I got the best story about that. So I'm in that same room the same night, and I got an old Confederate coat on that has inside pockets, deep inside pockets, right? And the phone rings, and our Artemis gets it, and somebody else says, Ronnie's coming now. He's coming now. And it was like, I was like, there was beer in there, alcohol, all kinds of stuff in this room, right? he says, Ronnie's coming now. We got to do something. Got to do something. And they were looking for places to hide all this shit, right? And all of a sudden, one of them looked at me and says, you got inside pockets in an old coat, don't you? I said, yeah. And Ronnie knows you don't drink, right? And I said, yeah. And he opened that coat up and they stuffed all that alcohol on me, right? And the next thing, here, there's a big bang at the door, and it's Ronnie and JoJo. And he's got that old shopping bags that you have with the rope handles, that look like a rope. And he had that, and he's into the room, and he's searching the room for every under the bed. I mean, everything, looking. He's not finding it. He says, "I know you goddamn bastards got it somewhere," just like that. I want it, and I want it now. And so, now he's mad he couldn't find it, so he's leaving. And as he was leaving, he bumped into me. And you know what happened? You could hear the bottles rattling on me, right? Clink, 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 clink. He turns around and gives me the eye like I know that, my life is short now. I'm going to go quick. And then he just gives me that look. He said, yeah, these boys are smart. Yes, he knows that I know that you don't drink. So he never figured that you would have any alcohol on you, right? So open that coat and open it now. Boom. Out comes whiskey bottles, beer bottles, all that kind of stuff out of my pocket. And I thought for sure he was going to lay one on me too. But he didn't. He didn't. He knew that they put me up to it because I kept telling him Ronnie was not my idea. My idea. So, that, and I liked him for that. He was trying to make the band the serious corporation that he wanted it to be. He wanted to, do what Bill Graham said to him, maybe get Peter Rouge out of his hair, So, and I missed Dean. And that night that I found out Dean got killed in the crash, oh, that was not a good night. I got a phone call in LA from his current girlfriend back then, not Sally Ann or some other gal. And she said, I want you to know that Dean's dead. And I said, what? I didn't believe her. She says, well, you got killed in a plane crash. And I thought this was some wicked kind of joke. And the next morning, well, I really didn't go back to sleep because I was so disturbed. But the next morning, I opened my door because I got the LA Times, and it was at my door. And right there on the front page said, Southern rock band playing crack, the whole 9 yards, right on the front page of my paper. And, I called in sick that day. I didn't go to work that day. But he was a nice guy. You liked him, huh? You liked him.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Who do you think it was that called you? Was it Ann Thompson or was it Dory DiMattina?
I think it was Ann Thompson.
Ann Thompson, yeah.
Yeah,
they were good friends.
Yeah, and we were, anytime, because I was working and playing gigs at night, he called me and says, here's the dates we're gonna be at and where we're gonna be at in California. Let me know where you want to be, and I'll get you lined out for everything. And he always did too. They took a bus from California to Santa Barbara to do a show there with Hart and Jefferson Starship. I think it was Lynyrd Skynyrd, Hart, and Jefferson Starship. And I think Hart opened it up, then Lynyrd Skynyrd played, then Jefferson Starship was the closer. But they took a bus, and I got to go up there. And that back in the backstage, I remember that's when they're giving Gary a hard time about his knee surgery and the car wreck and all that kind of stuff. So I'll never forget that there was a little trailer back there, and I watched Gary kick the door right off the trailer, just telling the press, "Yeah, see, 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 I'm all back to normal." Then he walked away and he grabbed a cane. He walked off the cane. And I was playing bass at that time, and I had just started my job working for Los Angeles County, and I didn't have a lot of money, and the strings on that Fender bass were shot. Leon gave me a gross, not just one set, but a gross of Roto Sounds strings. Let me see they're called Roto Sounds. I'm not sure if I remember who made them or not. He didn't just give me one set for my bass. He gave me the whole damn box. I'll never forget.
Were they Dean Markley's?
No, the
Because
guitars.
Leon used ground round wound.
Right, he
Dean,
did.
Dean Markley round ground wound was what they called them.
They were hard on the frets, but I didn't, I wasn't going to boil my strings anymore because that just wasn't getting it. So that was real nice.
Yeah,
I don't.
they had round wound and ground wound round. Yeah. Round wound and ground wound round.
The I believe the ground round are really hard on your frets is what I remember, because I used those up until I moneyed up at work and I started getting enough money, and then I started buying Diodario half rounds,
Uh-huh.
better on your frets, because I that's the cool thing about being a musician is you learn a lot from other musicians about gear and about how to take care of your instrument, all kinds of cool stuff. And you'd be one of the neatest people to sit down and pick your brain, because God knows how many instruments you took care of, and groupies too.
Mike, I have a question. Did Alan ever teach you anything about guitar or how to play? Anything that you learned from Alan
Yeah,
particularly?
the only thing that he ever taught me, and this is after his accident, where he was paralyzed, so he could still play, but he couldn't really. He didn't have any. He had muscle atrophy, and he really couldn't play. But he could show you real slow the part, right? So he asked me out of the blue. He says, "Do you play Give Me Three Steps with your band back in Oregon?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, every damn band that I ever see do a cover of that, I absolutely hate it because they're not playing this fill that he wrote. He wrote that song, Give Me Three Steps." He says, "And if you're gonna keep playing it, I want you to play this fill." So he got Blackie, and he got that guitar up, and he showed me the fill. And then I got it until I could play it for you right now, but that guitar's tuned to an open E, so I can't play the fill on that guitar. I could get one of my other guitars, but it's going to take time to get them out of their cases and get it in here. Anyway, I learned it good, and from then on, I always played it, and I felt really good when I played it too. Alan be so proud of me. So, I got this one down good, and I did. But that's the only time. And he wasn't big about telling you if you were a good player or not. And I think this what I'm about to tell you is one of the happiest things I ever have Craig listen to. So I think the next time I was out of this house, I had written a song and I loved it a lot. In fact, I think honestly, in order to tell you the story right, I would have to have a guitar and play it. So maybe another time, okay? Because I want my amp set up, I want the guitar set up. But I'll tell you in a nutshell what it is. He goes, "Oh yeah, chicken vegan. What do you call your song?" I says, "Well, I call it I Know a Lot." Yeah, he went just like this to me. He says, "What?" He says, "Yeah, I call it I Know a Lot." And then right then he had his BB gun behind his chair. He reached behind the chair and he brought out the BB gun and he kind of laid it across his lap there. And he looked at me and he says, "This better be good." And I played it for him. I hauled ass and I played it for him. And I ripped it out. And then when I was done, he took the BB gun and he put it back behind the chair. And he says, "I love them open notes you was hitting. That was wicked." And that was the end of that. But I got, that's the closest, for me personally, that I ever heard him complimenting. Because, he really didn't compliment anybody. His dad told me so too. Because he heard that. His dad was standing in the kitchen. He heard that whole thing happen. He says, "Alan never tells nobody that he likes their guitar playing." Unless, just, I don't know. You know what I mean, Craig?
Oh yeah, sure do.
Yeah. So, um, and I don't see it as being egotistic or anything on his part. He earned the right to be that way, especially where he started from playing guitar, lifting the needle on the records and slowing the records down to 33 in RPM. That's one of the things I remember he told me. I asked him how he learned all them Clapton licks, from Cream. How did you ever learn that stuff? He goes, well, my mom had a turntable that I could lower down to 16 RPMs. And I'd lower that son of a bitch like rubber, right? And I'd learn all those licks really slow, and then I'd speed it up. and I had never heard of anybody doing that, but that's genius. Genius to do that, to think about even contemplating it or attempting to do that. And that's where he was. The other thing about him is telephone numbers and hotel rooms. I don't know what do they call it? An idonic memory? How do you say that?
Well, photographic memory is to
photographic. And then there's another
look at something and then remember it.
Right. He could do that with phone numbers and room numbers. Because there's people when I was in the hotel room and they ask him, where's Big Lou, or where's Dean at, or where's Gary at, or whatever, and he'd pop off the room number. Because when he got there, he looked at where everybody was, and he had it memorized.
Wow.
And then he told me, Mike, if somebody that I liked, I met him on the road 20 years ago, and they gave me their phone number, I could call him up right now. And he could too. And that's freaking amazing. And I think Allison has that, because when I took her to Disney World, we were sitting down at the table, and she knew the lyrics to every Lynyrd Skynyrd song ever done. Because she was singing them all. Call Me the Breeze. Everyone, she was singing them all, and she didn't miss a word. And she didn't have anything in front of her. She didn't have the music going, to sing with. She just knew them all. She loved her daddy, and she was so proud of all that. But that was amazing. That just, that was freaky. How I couldn't remember that many lyrics, especially somebody else who wrote them. I couldn't remember that. She's an amazing girl. She's doing good now too. I stay in contact with her Aunt Betty, and just get tuned in on Allison, because I love that girl. We had a blast at Disney World. I told her dad that we would drive from Oregon with my stepdaughters, who were about her age then, and I'd take Allison to Disney World, and we did that. We drove all the way from Oregon to Jacksonville, Mandarin, and picked her up and took her to Disney World. We had a blast. And, she wanted to ride at Space Mountain 3 times, and everybody was, who was with us was, kind of get perturbed because they wanted to move on to other houses. If Allison wants to go on Space Mountain, we're going on Space Mountain, so I did it, I took her, and, so we were there to 4 or 5 in the morning. And by the time we got back up to Alan's house, it was like dawn was breaking. And we walked through the door, and I hear him yelling for me. And Allison ran first. She ran in the bedroom first. And she was so excited. Daddy, 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 daddy. And I came in there, and Allison went back out, and it was pretty much just me and him. And he looked at me, and he pulled my hair, and he started crying. He says, I would never believe that you would come all the way from Oregon, drive here, and take Allison to Disney World when you told me you would. He says, you just have no idea. You just have no idea. I don't know. That was not only for him, that was for Allison. And he didn't want to take her to Disney World because he was kind of, it wasn't cool about people seeing him in a wheelchair. And that would have been too hard on him,
Yeah.
Plus, he didn't want to detract from her having a good time from fans once they found out who he was bugging him while he was trying to take her to Disney World. So I did. Now, today, all these years ago, I'm having to report that Aunt Betty has taken Allison just about every year to Disney World.
Oh, that's wonderful.
In fact, they were just there about a month ago. So
I heard they just raised their rates down in Disney World.
they got there. Yeah, you're right. I heard that too. It's terrible.
Yeah.
You know, you need to go to the bank and get a loan to go to Disney World. That's something not right. Something not right in America, Mr. Reed.
Well, it's all a business now. I know somebody was just there 2 weeks ago, and he said it's like over $100 a day for one park. And yeah, it's a business. It's not really family friendly as far as pricing goes
I
anymore.
heard one of the parks was going to $180 a day.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. And then the food is just astronomical as well. The last place I would want to go, but
You know,
the kids love
he
it.
he can do something that I can't. He can say, I worked for one of the best rock and roll bands that ever rolled. And it
That's
says,
right.
and it only costs $7 to see us.
Yeah. Well, Craig is very, very modest, and if you watch his shows, he recalls so many wonderful things, and the experiences and the people he's met is just incredible. It's incredible. So it's nice that for me to be part of this podcast. I'm so honored. And I just happened to fill in for Griff when he was moving, but I love doing it. And the fact that I'm meeting you finally and talking to you, Mike, is also amazing. We've been friends on Facebook for a long time, so it's nice to make this connection.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can relate to what Mike was saying about he never looked at Alan like he was a super rock star, because like I said before, I never looked at any of them, Gary or Alan or Ronnie or Steve or any of them, like they were rock stars, so to say. They were just always friends, and that's kind of the way Mike's relationship with Alan was, just kind of like on a more of a friend basis than a fan.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mike, you're aware that Craig has Alan's car in his.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. You know why? Because being in the middle of the poison ivy is a perfect place for it.
Yeah, it's back there, and I feel bad that I've let it slip into the condition it's in, but I just can't seem to get rid of it. Be wanting to buy parts of it and everything, and I just kind of leave it there. It's just...
I feel you, and I hear what you're saying, because having that there and not messing with it is keeping the love between you and Alan going. Because if you start messing with it, you're messing with the memory.
Yeah.
And you don't want to mess with that memory,
Yeah.
Or otherwise you might wind up at Winco at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Mike, can I ask you to tell Craig and the viewers about the peanut butter story? I love the peanut
This
butter
is a good
story.
one. First of all, I'm sure Betty's going to watch this, so I'm gonna first make a disclaimer. Betty, this was back in the day. I love her. She's wonderful. The marijuana business was a sideline that I was involved in since the time I was 10 years old. I used to buy kilos from Mexicans for $80 when I was 10 years old and take them over to the African American section of town, and they had black guys that I worked with getting rid of it. I was rolling at 10 years old on Greyhound buses with suitcases. Woo! And don't my father was in the pharmaceutical business, and he didn't treat me very good. He was kind of a mean kind of guy. And so I just thought, well, hell, I'll go into the drug business too. But it was only the marijuana business. So anyway, years later, I had access to Humboldt County skunk bud. Some of the best bud right when it first started coming out, and was getting to be known. So for Alan's birthday, I would get a big peanut butter jar, the big one, like the commercial kind. And I empty that. My little brother taught me this, because he was rolling in this business, and I knew that he shipped it all over, but I didn't ever want. I was too scared to do that. But my brother, Anyway, he says, get the peanut butter jar, you howl out, you don't touch it, you know, you don't give any way to get any of the stink on the container, okay? And you get the peanut butter out and you wrap it up and stick it down in there and you put all the peanut butter back on top. You know, and then you bang, you get it all square, and then you don't use your address. And then, you know, I mean, I planned this I says, now, you know, if anything happens, you can just tell them a fan sent it to you. And you had no idea because that's happening all the time. You know, that if I was your attorney and anything happened, I'd just say, hey, a fan gave it to me. You know, I got some really dedicated fans. I had no idea. Take the fifth, don't say nothing, you know. Anyway, but we never had a problem with that because, you know, my little brother never had a problem with that. So it'd been tested over and over and over again. So sent to him. And so I got this killer Humboldt County skunk bud. And I went and I had knew these Indians and I had them make me a pipe out of stone pipe, the Indian pipe, you know, the red clay pipes that the Indians use. And I had to make the bowl was Dwayne Allman's face. The handlebars, it was perfect. Perfect. So I had that on me and I got on the phone. I told him, okay, says that package is going to get to you on our birthday, or whatever you do, to not open it up until I get there. Because I have a little other present that goes with it. So I don't want you messing up my groove here, okay? I said, okay, you know. So I get on the plane, I fly out there, I get there, and I walk through the door, and there's Alan. He's got his hands in the peanut butter jar. And he's digging, you know. I mean, that's weird how the time was. And I looked at him, I says, I thought I told you not to get into that. You know, and then we got them all cleaned up, got it out there, and got everything rolling. Then I handed him that little package with that pipe in there. And he opened it up. I'll never forget this. He opened it up, and out popped Dwayne Allman's head right out of the pipe. You know, Dwayne Allman's pipe. It was pipe. And he goes, you was stud. And I says, now you can get high with Dwayne Allman every day, bro. So that was another good day. That was the Porsche day. You know, after that, then we went out with the Porsche, and it's fashion. I just, you know, I have memories that, you know, that have nothing to do with music, really. You know, they do which is good for the kind of memories that you got, Craig, being with him.
Yeah.
You know, every time you hear me that you were in a car with him, and he says, looky here. I'm thinking, you know, even though it was that had to be wild, just absolutely wild, you know. So, you know, and from listening to you on all these podcasts, I kind of picked up that you had a lot of love for Mr. Collins. You loved Alan.
Oh yeah, me and Alan were like me and you, him and you. You know, you're like best friends. Yeah. Amy, when Amy was out on
Yeah, I'm on that podcast. All right, I love you. That was my wife.
Hi, Wendy.
Yeah, when Amy come off stage when the tribute band got together and Alan couldn't be there or nothing, and Amy come off stage and she grabbed me, hugged me, and she said, "My daddy loved you," and that really, you know, that was real special.
Right. Yeah, he did. You know, because
after Gary and Alan kind of split, you know, Gary or Alan was kind of lost, you know, and I was there with him, and I was hanging around with Alan, and Alan said, "What are you doing hanging around with me? You Gary's buddy." And I said, "Well, Gary's gone. I need a new buddy now." So,
right. You know, and
we became real close friends.
Right. And you know, that was just his way of dealing with what was going on.
Oh yeah.
Because he would strike out at you, especially if you had some alcohol.
Oh yeah.
He would strike out because, you know, I understand exactly what you're saying, but you know he didn't mean none of that.
Yeah.
You know, really, he was hurting.
Yeah. I've said that before. Alan would say do things just to shock you, just to see what your reaction was like.
That's true. That's real true. He was testing the waters. And it's sad. The reason he felt like that is because of the tragedy in his life. I understand it. Him losing Ronnie in the plane crash, him losing this, all the kind of stuff that happened to him. Him losing Kathy. He was testing the waters. Even the more tragedy, the more tests, because he just didn't know what he didn't know what he could hold on to anymore. I just wish that he never had the calamity that he had in his life, because he was a good guy. One more neat story to tell about Alan. He went into a McDonald's, right? They stopped at a McDonald's to eat, and it was during the Austin Collins days, because Barry Harwood was there too. And there was a little lady in the line with a bunch of kids who was counting change in her coin purse to see if she could buy him something. And they were begging her to get a Happy Meal, but she was telling them she couldn't do it. She didn't have the money. So when Alan got up to the counter, he pulled out a roll, and he told the guy, says, she'll have one of everything on the menu, and 5 or 6 Happy Meals. And then he turned around and gave her, I don't know how much. He told her to open her purse up, and he slammed the roll in her purse. I just, and he did that without, out of the eye of anybody. He don't want to say, here, looky here, how great I am. He did it all on the sly, boom. I don't know, and there's that part of Alan that people need to hold on to, and not dwell on the substance abuse issues or the tragic issues. They need to hang on to how much of a good-hearted man he really was, because the truth is, if he wasn't that good-hearted, he wouldn't have been affected by all those things that happened to him. Don't you think, Craig?
Oh yeah, Alan and I used to go to a soul food restaurant when we'd be up in Atlanta at the recording studio, and we'd go into this place and eat breakfast, and there was a woman in there playing piano, and Alan, barefooted and just didn't look like a rock star, was up and kind of was talking to this lady like he wanted to sit down and play piano with her, and she didn't know who he was, and so he just kind of went back, and we just finished eating. When we walked out, he stuck $100 bill in her tip jar. Yeah,
I remember this. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we went out to eat a lot too, and went to St. Augustine and stuff. And he told me his favorite foods was hush puppies and coleslaw.
Yeah. So hey, go ahead, Mike.
I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Hey, no problem. Kathy, do we have any questions that somebody wanted to ask? I don't know if we advertise. Yeah, we did advertise we were going to have Mike on. Does anybody want to know anything about? Do we have any questions, or are we prepared for that?
No, actually, I did not look at the questions because I knew that Mike was going to tell us a story. And I had a lot of questions based on my conversations with you, Mike, that I just wanted to know all about your friendship. And you've covered everything. I have a feeling that after people view this podcast, they're going to just be so happy and put a lot of nice feedback and comments, as they always do. And they might even ask for you to come back again and play that.
Yeah, I need to do that. Play that song. I know a lot.
Yeah, but it was my suggestion to have you on. I said to Craig, Mike Caruso, do you know him? And he said, not really. I heard of him, but I said, he was a good friend of Alan's, and he really should be on this show, because Alan people are still talking about Alan constantly. How many Facebook pages are there out there as tributes to Alan? Everybody loves him. They'll always love him, and there's something about him that, people just eat this information. So, and I'm so happy that. To him. And, when you were talking about his birthday, the day I met him back in 1980, I was at his house. He asked me my birthday too.
Yeah.
I said, my birthday is July 14th. And he said, my birthday is July 19th. It was something about, I was like, damn, I wish my birthday were on the 19th. I wish we could have had the birthday, but
partying with this the rest of your life.
I know. 5 days away and 9 years, but
We had a friend Ronnie Caruso who grew up with the band, and he's still one of my best friends. And
Ronnie had a brother named Mike.
Yeah, and everybody says, "Is Mike Caruso? Is that Ronnie's? Is he related to Ronnie?" And I said, "No."
That's been thrown at me for years. They want to know if I'm the Mike of the Ronnie and Mike from Jacksonville. The car dealership, the electronics.
Yeah, they owned a Kawasaki dealership. They owned a Crusoe Electric and the Kawasaki dealership, and then they had the golf course down there in Jacksonville.
Right. And when they'd answer
all the guys Alan actually bought his boat off of Ronnie from the Ronnie's Marina. Yeah.
Cool. So whenever I ask that question, I says, those guys are the East Coast fraction and I'm the West Coast fraction.
Yeah. Oh, I do have a question. I'm just looking at the YouTube from the last appearance that I had on the show. Craig, somebody said here, question for Craig, did he ever hear Gary play Alan's part in Freebird?
No.
I'm curious who his style would sound, and also what were the sound checks like? This was from Kyle Domini. Oh, Kyle asked a question last week.
No, I never heard Gary try to play Alan's parts of Freebird, and I never heard Alan try to play Gary's parts. But one question we overlooked last week was somebody asked when they started using the mirror ball, and after I rewatched the podcast, I realized that we overlooked that one. That was with our first lighting company, upstaging actually, and upstaging now is like the biggest upstage sound, upstage lighting. They're like the biggest company there is, Ronnie and Donnie Carone. And when they started, Donnie was like 16 years old, and Bobby was driving the truck, and Donnie was like 16 or not even 16, I don't think so. He couldn't drive the truck. So I would ride with them in their GMC bobtail, 14-foot bobtail with the lights in it, And yeah, that was when rock and roll audio was around. They all started together. So that was they kind of, I don't know, I don't remember whose idea it was to get a mirror ball, but yeah, that's when we first got it. That was like 1970, right at the end of 1974, 75. Yeah, we started using that. So we got anything else there, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm actually just looking right now. A cousin Figel, our friend cousin. Hi, cousin Figel. He says another great show. This is from the last show we were on. I got a question he says about the reunion tour at Red Rocks in Colorado. Okay, he said some asshole threw a gallon jug filled and hit Ed King in the face. The band just stopped, and Ed invited the person to come on down to the front and kick his ass. The guy never went down there. Do you remember this incident, Craig?
Was that with Ed King?
Yeah.
Back then I was when Ed was with the band, I was a drum roadie, and I don't know, I just didn't get involved with a bunch of the stuff that happened with the guitar players, I guess. I really don't. I remember one time Ed getting hit with something, but I don't think it was at Red Rocks, and he stopped and said, if I get hit again, I'm leaving. Whatever.
Hey, I was sitting at a table.
Ed wasn't fond of getting hit with things from the stage, from the crowd. Yeah. Was that Mike?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I was sitting at a table and I heard Ronnie tell a story about an encore. They were waiting for the encore for Freebird, right? and somebody threw a beer bottle as hard as they could, and they hit Gene Odom in the nose.
Oh,
Just splattered. And then Ronnie came around the corner and said to Gene, I guess they want the encore bad, don't they, Gene? I don't know if Craig was there for that, but and I've also, after hearing that, I also read about that in some books. In fact, I think Gene wrote about that in his book, that little book he wrote.
Yeah, that's why they quit playing "Give Me Back My Bullets" because people started throwing bullets at them.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Somebody
that
hit
would hurt.
Gary with a big old 38 special bullet, but yeah, they would take handfuls of 22 shells, just pepper the stage with them. And now Ronnie said, "We got to put playing that song before they start putting them bullets
or
in
explain
guns."
what it's about. They didn't understand what it's about. I got another question. I'm sorry. David Rice, what kind of, I know you probably answered this before, but he's asking, what kinds of strings and guitar cables or cords did y'all use, and how often did you change out the cords? I love the show.
We didn't change them unless they was crackling, but yeah, we used Dean Markley strings, and everybody used 10, 13, 17, 26, 36, 46, basically the same gauge. And we actually made our own cables, which Joe Barnes kind of invented a way to make the cables where we used microphone cable, and it had a ground, a shield, and then it had a ground wire, and then it had the hot wire, and the end of where the connection went into the amp, we would use the shield and the ground, and we put those together and then run the hot over to the other side. But then when it went out to the guitar, we left that shield open, and then we just used the black and the white wire, positive and negative, and didn't shield it. So it was from the amp, it was shielded out to the guitar, and then it wasn't shielded. And matter of fact, Brandon Miller last week was saying how he couldn't get the sound out of the mace like Alan would get. And my son Chad was talking to Joe Barnes about it, and Joe said, well, you probably got to use the same cable that we used back then in order to get that exact sound. And made a lot of sense. I don't know if Brandon was going wireless and trying to get that sound, but Joe said, that probably could be the issue. To get that exact sound, you're going to have to use that exact cable setup with the mace. But that's over my head.
No, that makes perfect sense, because if you use wireless, you're losing signal to the amp. That's why I've always used a cord,
Yeah.
And you're right. Different cords it's gonna change the signal that's going from the pickups into the amp. So I'll always be an old school tube amp and chords. No, none of this. I'm gonna walk out and rock the audience, none of that stuff, unless there's some dancers or something out there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, Joe was saying that the cables they build nowadays are better than the cables they built back in the 70s, So
right.
So we got anything else there, Kathy? We're right at about I think we're over an hour here, so
it's okay. It's great. Oh, and thank you to everybody who hits the subscribe button. We're up to 720 something. Yay, it's so easy. Just push a little button.
Hit the like and subscribe. It don't cost nothing. It just puts us on a higher algorithm so we can reach more people.
I told Craig that now that I'm helping out on the show, I'm going to get you guys up to 1,000. That's my goal.
Cool. We need to get to 1,000. They say it takes a year. They say when you start a podcast, it takes a year to get to 1,000. I think we're about 9 months now, so we're 3 months away from a year, and we're about 300, not quite 300 from the subscribe button. So yeah, help us out and and help us get over 1,000 so we can start reaching more people. I guess we're on a limited thing. When you're under 1,000, you're nobody as far as YouTube is concerned.
Now there is another question. Somebody doesn't give their name. They just have CC. The question is interesting because Mike and I had talked about Alan's favorite colors. Somebody asked, why did Alan always wear all white? Now, he didn't always wear all white. I recall a couple of times where he did wear white, but he also wore black and red, a lot of red. So tell us, Mike, what you knew about Alan's favorite colors. And Mike?
I just know for what he told me,
Yeah.
And I don't know how it came up in conversation, but he says, you do know my favorite colors are, I do know how it come up in conversation. I'm sorry. It has to do with Ladies of the Night. And he told me his favorite colors are black and white. They just do it for him, and then he went on to describe where the black and white was on the anatomy of a beautiful female lady. He made it real clear to me that his favorite colors are black and white. So, I'm laughing to myself that I remember that now. I just always remembered he said he loved black and white, but now I know why he loves black and white.
But red also. Did you say he liked red?
I'm sorry. Forgive me. Black and red.
Yeah. Black and red, but he also, Craig knows he liked white, but black, red, and white, a lot of his outfits that he wore were those colors. So
I don't know about the white, maybe that to keep him cool. If they're working a hot gate, white would keep you cooler than black and red.
What's nice is that, I usually focus on questions that people are asking on the YouTube channel, and it's a lot of the regular watchers. And now we have Mike CARUSO on here. So I'm so happy that you're on this show and I got to meet you, face to face and just share your memories. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this are going to enjoy it and ask for you to come back again. So whoever's talking to Craig, it's not I who's calling. It's probably Larry or Sammy or Jeff or his son. He has a lot of people who his regulars who call him. But is there anything else you wanted to add, Mike? Any extra special memories?
Is this live on YouTube now, or it's going to be posted later?
We're going to post it, but shortly in a couple of hours. But we don't edit anything, so if you mess up,
to my wife,
Oh yeah,
I can shoot off a message to Betty too.
Sure.
I don't feel like I've damned myself in any way.
No, I mean, it's just so wonderful that if she watches this, she'll know we all love Alan.
Yeah.
We do. And everything is to honor him and to remember him. And that's why there are so many Facebook pages out there. Alan Collins fan page, Alan Collins tribute page, everyday Alan. I mean, it's just endless. And it's all out of love and respect for him.
When I'm ever talking about him or anything, it is always in the back of my mind because I knew his dad, and I knew his daughters, and I do not want to ever say anything that would be disrespectful to them.
No,
because they loved their dad, and they loved, she loved her brother, and his daddy loved the heck out of him.
Yeah,
his dad was awesome because he took real good care of him when he was paralyzed. He took real good care of him. I have nothing but respect, and I miss him. I miss Larkin Sr. So yeah, just it's been a lot of years, but the love that I have for Mr. Collins has never faded.
Everybody knows Alan was a wild and crazy guy, and we can't make him out on the STONED Roadie show like he was some kind of an angel, because that scenario just don't fit Alan.
Well, when I was there, he was.
His wife was there too.
That's right.
Kathy was there. That's why.
That's right.
Kathy and the family. Yeah.
Had
you gone there by yourself, it would have been a whole different experience.
He's absolutely correcto mundo. He is. Okay, I just have to point out one more thing before I leave this podcast. And I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden it flashed on me that Craig's sitting right between me and Alan. He's sitting in a spot where he can double hit.
Yeah, that's a
Chief,
great picture.
Yeah, I'm
Chief
glad you
Tito.
sent me that picture. It worked out well for this special edition of the Saturday night special on the Stone Roadie show. So, are we going to wrap this up now, Kathy?
Yeah, but you have to sing a song. I mean, Mike has already played the guitar for us. So what are you going to sing for us today? Amazing Grace. What are the songs that you and I always sing together? This is the best part when he sings.
Yeah. Well, we'll just do my normal. Are we ready?
Yep.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. And that was podcast number 42 on the Stone Roadie show with a special edition version of the Saturday night special of the Stone Roadie show. And we're going to call that a wrap. All right, cut. And here we go. Let me hit this button here.
Say goodbye, Mike Caruso.
Goodbye, Mike Caruso. Goodbye,
Thank
Kathy
you.
Godsey.
Bye, Kathy Godsey.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for stopping in at 42 of the Stone Roadie show. We're out of here.